My business is a very short-term business. I am looking to respond to what you, as customers, require of me on a day-to-day basis. My parents' time, if we went into a shop and there was nothing on the shelf, there would have been a shrug of the shoulders and I should have got there earlier. Now, in the modern Britain, you have plenty of choice to go to another supermarket and take your trade elsewhere. And what the Minister talked about, actually providing products on shelves, availability, is utterly key to my business. And my supply chains, I'm reliant upon maintaining that supply. Now, it's actually incredibly apt that we're in London, because the structure of supply chains used to be a very historic one. So if you think about the massive historic markets of London, Billingsgate for fish, Covent Garden, it wasn't just a venue for musicals, it was the fruit and vegetable market for London. Smithfield still exists as the meat market to London. And those wholesale markets were replicated around the country. They have moved on since the war. And now most people rely on supermarkets rather than going to a butcher, a greengrocer, or a fishmonger in their local high street. That wasn't done by government decree. That was done by people recognising the convenience and the opportunity of doing a one-stop shop, and they took the decision to go and shop that way. And I can't see that but change. Businesses do change. We have no divine right to succeed. It is only by satisfying customers that we succeed. And ASDA got to the point where it nearly went bust in the 90s. It literally was days away from running out the cash flow to pay for the wages. So we have to make sure that what we do is appropriate to our customers. So we've had conversations about fish sustainability, and you'll see that many of the fish I now sell have got line caught, and many of the markets talk about line caught. That uses an awful lot more diesel, it's a lot more precise and discards are lower, but trawlers and trawling reduces the amount of carbon used. And I think the challenge for you going forward is how do we deal with the compromises associated with that and overlay it with a social agenda around the communities who have got current large investments in those supply chains. I'm conscious that I've tried to pose some questions without answers, but I'm sure the debate will develop. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. Please take a seat on the far right. Thank you. So now we welcome our next speaker. She's a policy advisor for the fair trade organisation Traidcraft. Will you welcome Fiona Gooch?
Thank you, Fiona. The way that products get to our shelves is essentially a series of different purchasing decisions. So a farmer sells to an exporter or a factory, and then that comes to an importer, and then that comes to a retailer. That is the very shortest supply chain probably that there is in retail. Now, what is happening in terms of the trends is that retailers are asking more for less. They're asking their suppliers to sell stuff to the retailers at a lower price, but they want more for it. They want better technical specification, and they also want better labour conditions. Okay, so that's the retailer. Next level down, you're the supplier. You're receiving this, but more for less? How are you going to do this? So you're now employing workers, or you might be buying from farmers. You're also going to push exactly those same risks down the supply chain. You are going to find people that you can employ, who you can exploit. You are not going to put people on permanent contracts. You're going to avoid paying maternity pay and sickness. And effectively, we have a system, if it is unchecked, that is driving exploitation. Why is it possible for retailers to push pressures down the supply chain? And that's answered by this diagram. We've got more than 3 million farmers producing products that they want to sell to about 160 million consumers in Europe. Their products predominantly go through 110 buying desks. 110 individuals decide what 160 million people can choose to buy. And those 110 individuals in the middle at the bottleneck are incentivised by their corporate practices driven by the retailers, normally to do with maximising profit per shelf space. This is a problem. It's a problem around the system. We and other campaigning organisations are arguing for a groceries code adjudicator to monitor the relationships between supermarkets and their suppliers, because the retailers are so powerful they must be held to account.
within our operations, we're increasingly working directly with farmers. And Fiona's quite rightly put on there, there's a lot of middlemen operating, and we are taking those, we're removing those people. So we now control our direct importing operation, for example. And by that, we're then able to operate directly with the growers and start to upskill. And also, it's not just overseas, domestically too. So working with dairy farmers directly. You know, we got an award from Compassion in World Farming last year because we have that direct conversation with the dairy farmers, including economics.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying that ASDA is working directly with the suppliers, both over here, but also in the developing world, to actually relate directly to them for good, for benefit for them, and for sustainability for the future. Yeah. Fiona, how do you respond to that?
I think you're referring to IPL.
Yeah.
Yes, so IPL is a subsidiary of ASDA that has been set up. It might mean that ASDA is able to capture more of the profit in the supply chain. It does cut out a middleman, yes, but it also means that you've got a more concentrated management of the supply chain. There are definitely benefits, though, as Chris says, which is problems occur in the supply chain because of lack of communication. If the more people you talk to in a chain, like Chinese whispers, you lose the transmission. So setting up IPL should enable less waste, because you won't have people producing product that then ASDA doesn't actually want to buy. So there are positives, but also you could see it from another point of view, is given that the profits are under pressure in some supply chains, it will enable ASDA, which essentially is Walmart, to capture more of the profit that is available.
Mm-hmm. How do you respond to that, Chris?
I think you have to judge us by the results. And the level of scrutiny on supply chains is absolutely enormous. You know, the communications that we have today are so rapid. If Fiona finds something out about ASDA, she's not going to be shy. If she had an example, she'd be playing it. So I think, and as we go forward, I'm very open to that scrutiny. So rather than people talking about how bad supermarkets are, if I'm doing something wrong, and I say it to lots of organisations, tell me and I'll help to resolve it. If, on the other hand, it's not me, well, perhaps you have to go and talk to the people that have got the issue.
Yeah.
I actually do need to come back on that one, which is, if you see that bottleneck diagram, if you are a supplier and you don't have many people to sell to, let's think about the UK. 80% of all food is only sold by 4 companies in the UK for out-of-home consumption. Tesco's, ASDA, Sainsbury's, Morrison's. Yeah? If you are a supplier to one of them, you are producing in fairly large volume. You cannot risk losing your business to those companies. That therefore means that you are not going to raise problems in a way that might mean that you lose that business. It's so critical. Some businesses, not ASDA, run a 1-to-2 relationship. One retailer, 2 suppliers. And what you can do with that is play one off against the other. When one misbehaves, you reward the other one and you slash the order to the other one. That is a really, really bad impact on workers and farmers in developing countries, because instead of earning the income that they expected to earn, for some tit-for-tat thing happening in the UK, what you end up is with the farmers are only going to be paid for half of what they've already committed their crop to grow, their land to grow in terms of crop. So I think retailers would be well to be aware that there's a really strong climate of fear amongst the supplier community in terms of coming forwards.
Let me hold you there if I can, Fiona. We got a tweet come in from Claudia Josephine who says, so how exactly are we going to solve world hunger?
I actually think large multinational organisations have a responsibility. We need to have proper global agreements, and then business can operate within that. That's the bit we're sadly lacking at the present moment in time. But in the meantime, we're trying to do our bit.